The recent breakthrough in animal cloning is one that could yield enormous benefits, enabling us to reproduce the most productive strains of crop and livestock, holding out the promise of revolutionary new medical treatments and cures, helping to unlock the greatest secrets of the genetic code. But unlike the splitting of the atom, this is a discovery that carries burdens as well as benefits. Science often moves faster than our ability to understand its implications. That is why we have a responsibility to move with caution and care, to harness the powerful forces of science and technology so that we can reap the benefit while minimizing the potential danger. This new discovery raises the troubling prospect that it might someday be possible to clone human beings from our own genetic material. There is much about cloning that we still do not know, but this much we do know. Any discovery that touches upon human creation is not simply a matter of scientific inquiry. It is a matter of morality and spirituality as well. My own view is that human cloning would have to raise deep concerns, given our most cherished concepts of faith and humanity. Each human life is unique, born of a miracle that reaches beyond laboratory science. I believe we must respect this profound gift and resist the temptation to replicate ourselves. At the very least, however, we should all agree that we need a better understanding of the scope and implications of this most recent breakthrough. Last week, I asked our National Bioethics Advisory Commission, headed by President Harold Shapiro of Princeton, to conduct a thorough review of the legal and the ethical issues raised by this new cloning discovery, and to recommend possible actions to prevent its abuse, reporting back to me by the end of May. In the meantime, I am taking further steps to prevent human cloning. The federal government currently restricts the use of federal funds for research involving human embryos. After reviewing these restrictions, our administration believes that there are loopholes that could allow the cloning of human beings if the technology were developed. Therefore, today I am issuing a directive that bans the use of any federal funds for any cloning of human beings. Effective immediately, no federal agency may support, fund, or undertake such activity. Of course, a great deal of research and activity in this area is supported by private funds. That is why I am urging the entire scientific and medical community, every foundation, every university, every industry that supports work in this area, to heed the federal government's example. I'm asking for a voluntary moratorium on the cloning of human beings until our Bioethics Advisory Commission and our entire nation have had a real chance to understand and debate the profound ethical implications of the latest
So
advances.
how is that then different than, and I know this to be true for a fact, it's going to sound kind of woo-woo and out there, but consciousness transfer is something that they do, that has been done many, many times. It's nothing new. So explain that. What is that?
Yeah. I guess this comes naturally from the possession thing too.
Yeah.
So that's a nice flow. Consciousness transfer is when your entire vantage point as a person is moved to another person, to another location. It can be into a machine. It can be into a clone body. For me, it was very typically into one of my clones. It can even be done into another independent person, which is, of course, a hugely invasive experience for the person and for you. Yeah, it's kind of what the technocrats talk about, or it has similarities where it's like, oh, we're going to upload our consciousness to the cloud and then we'll download it into a cyborg body. It's like that's already literally been happening, as you say, for at least, the last 50 or 100 years. In my case, most typically I'd be transferred to a clone body and I would be tortured, or I'd have to torture others in the clone body for the sole purpose of making me more fragmented when I came back to my original body. So that's one of the more simple examples, that it was basically part of my training. And depending on how much energy they want to invest, Some of these technologies put you in the other body only for 15 or 20 minutes, like they wear off pretty fast, and then you're right back in your original body. Others will leave you out for hours or even days, or it can be done permanently, which was basically the case with the person from Montauk. His name was Max coming into this body. That was a permanent consciousness transfer. Like Max is never going back to his original body. Like he's here to stay. He's part of the Elandra system now. So it can be permanent as well. And again, there's also an organic version of all of this stuff, which spiritual people usually call walk-ins. When there's a conscious agreement between spirits, that a new soul will come into the body. Sometimes they occupy the body together. Sometimes the original soul leaves. That's just a universal, natural thing, which anybody can go through. And a lot of, higher vibrational people will be very familiar with this experience. But the non-organic manipulated version usually relies on this Orion technology to move people around.
Okay, so now you've mentioned that you were cloned, so let's go into that. That's something, there's a lot of public figures out there walking around who are actually clones of the originals. People wouldn't necessarily perceive that, but explain that whole thing. What are clones for people that don't know, and how does this all work?
Yeah. Clones are replicas of your body without your soul in them. So they are sometimes, some versions have to grow up like a normal human, and other versions basically have a very accelerated growth process. So they can make a human body exactly your age and appearance, in a matter of hours. And again, there's a wide variety of cloning. Human parties are using forms of cloning technology dating from a lot of different time periods, reverse engineered from different alien species. It's something that basically every advanced race has figured out how to do at some point. And we have versions of it on Earth from all over the galaxy, from all different time periods. So the technological specifics will vary quite widely. But it's in terms of what affects us most on a daily basis, we're at the point where cloning is so cheap and so accessible to the US military and other parties, to the CIA, to the entertainment industry moguls. It's at the point where the technology is so accessible that basically anybody of any social prestige will be cloned. Like it's basically guaranteed at this point. Because it takes them so little effort, so little money to make the clones.
And why would people want to be cloned? At this echelon, why would people have clones of themselves?
Many, many, many reasons. As we said at the beginning, programming is a very faulty process because people are always coming back to themselves, back to their source consciousness, back to God, goddess, universe, back to real life. They're always coming back to their senses. So programming always fails universally. I mean, just all the time. So people who have been through programming are waking up even spontaneously without any outside help, just waking up from inside, just as a natural process. So programming is always backfiring, and people who are programmed are always malfunctioning in various ways. So it's a very convenient way to replace people. It's like, Lady Gaga has to play a show, but she's malfunctioning and she's like, she's regressing and having some sort of healing experience. We better shut that down, and we're going to have a clone play the show for her, just to give a very pedestrian example of an artist, with lots of clones. So, and everything. They're almost like understudies for actors, like like the clones have their own consciousness, and sometimes they're piloted by a person who's conscious of what they're doing. They're piloted by someone with training, basically acting training or clone body training, and so someone else will be moved into the clone body to control it. Like when you're watching a fake Lady Gaga at a concert, like there's an actor inside that body who's been training for decades to be in that role. So, to be the understudy. Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah, so this whole system allows for people to be replaced very quickly,
Yeah.
with very short notice. Yeah.
Yeah. And to my knowledge, this occurs also, this replacement, when certain key figures die, but the
Hmm.
cult is not ready to let what they represent or their program die.
Yeah.
So, and then I don't know if you've noticed this, but everyone who's of any importance seems to always die in December,
Mm.
regardless of when they actually died. They're always announced, like recently Carter, right?
Oh,
Um, so I think that's interesting. And so that makes a lot of sense. It's basically, it's part of the control structure. And so let's say in your example, so the original Lady Gaga, her personality programmed, satanically programmed person, her clones wouldn't necessarily, so it's not like her consciousness is in the clones. There's a similar consciousness inhabiting those clone bodies. Okay.
yeah. Yeah, it's very, very hard for one person to control multiple bodies. We're not designed for that. We're designed to have one body. So, there are some who can do it to a limited extent. I mean, I was one of those people, and the cult really valued me for that because I could actually have two or three people functional at the same time using my own mind, which was considered very unusual. It's a horrible experience. But yeah, but generally speaking, it's not the actual person's consciousness or soul in the clone. Yeah, it's someone else using the body. Mhm.
So, what happens is I mean, since this has been your experience too, have you met other clones of yourself, like actually face to face?
I have, not as a free person to my knowledge. Maybe it's happened, but when I was still in the cult, it was a frequent experience. Yeah. I mean, I've seen entire rooms that are just me. Um,
Wow.
like, yeah, which is a freaky experience. But yeah, I've definitely had that one.
Okay. And with cloning, I mean, and this technology, like we've said, has existed for a long time. They basically can take a cell from your body and grow it into a replica of you, and do it so quickly that they can match your age, just everything about you, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And for bloodline people, they will have copies held cryogenically of your parents' of genetic material, your father's sperm and your mother's eggs. Like they will have all these things preserved. So not it's not only clones, it's also like literal siblings. I mean, in my case, my genetic material is still being held and still being used to make more people. So there's a tremendous amount of artificial fertilization going on as well, which bears mentioning. Yeah.
Yeah, when I was, like I said earlier, when I was reading Zvali's part one autobiography, I mean, she talks about having been literally created, genetically, along with, I think she was a triplet, so along with other versions of herself, and then implanted into a woman to give birth, and then, they usually kill that person, and then the Jesuit fathers, which are male and female, become her parents and all that. So
Hmm.
that is something that has also gone on for a long time, where people are genetically created and then implanted, into someone's uterus for, again, very specific purposes. Even the timing of the pregnancy, of the birth, is exact. So this is a huge, so we have like a snippet of, ooh, genetics has evolved. No, this has been going on for a long time.
Hmm.
And they make like in the case of triplets, and I worked with someone who was created underground and, implanted, and had three, they were triplets, identical. And the purpose seemed to be to replace, to either have them in different, to replace one with the other. So if the person is important, especially as children, then they kind of put one in, take one out, to give them a rest or whatnot. And I don't know if you have any other thoughts on why they create multiple versions just from the get-go.
There are some genetics that they're quite obsessed with. The cult people are, among other things, very racist. Um, and they have very advanced eugenics programs to isolate specific genetic types and reproduce as many of those as possible. In my case, I had a twin brother, and I'd really like to be honoring him more in my speaking, so I'm glad to bring it up. The triplets made me think of it. My twin brother was never given a normal civilian life. Like, he never got a birth certificate, as far as I'm aware. He was kept entirely in a cult context and didn't go to school, didn't have like the normal upbringing things in society. So that was like a pain point for many, many years for me. Just knowing he was there but not being allowed to acknowledge him. I was torture trained to mostly believe that I never had a brother. I had to deny him. And he was used as a kind of voodoo doll against me. They would do a lot of targeting of me spiritually and sometimes physically through him. So it was a very sadistic, complex, relationship. I've been feeling much more in my body since he passed. He passed at a similar time to my dad, around 2019. And I miss him, but he's also with me in spirit form now, so he is present with me, and it's a much better relationship than it was when he was in a body. But yeah, they will try to have twins and triplets and as many copies of the person, as many related bodies to that body as they can get away with. Yeah.
Yeah. And I just want to quickly sort of touch on something you said that also helps people kind of understand this, because I've had it, and it's to have the front life, right?
Mm.
Like, people will say, but how could you, but you were in school, but you had a normal, yeah, I had this front life, this normal life of financially quite privileged, actually, with private schools and this and this and this. And
Mhm.
but then there's the other life. And they with the mind control, it gets split. So to me, I never fully was. I was always aware, even in my front life, like that it wasn't, I didn't really interact with other kids. I was very withdrawn, but this is how it works. So it appears to be one kind of life, but there's always a secret other life going on in the background. And so when you mentioned that about your twin, and yes, a lot of kids are raised their whole lives brutalized and never even see the surface of the earth. They're always under the ground, and they're used for all kinds of things, including breeding. So there's breeders that never see or experience a quote normal human life.
Yeah.
It's a really sick and twisted reality, and there's so much under the ground. So I don't know if you want to speak to that for a minute.
Yeah. So a lot of cult survivors have this experience that you're talking about where, yeah, they have this double life and triple life. I mean, I'm amazed that I was even able to develop somewhat normally, considering how
Yeah.
little sleep I got when I was
Yeah.
growing up. Because I would literally have a full school day, and then I'd be like underground or in a torture facility for like another full day, and like sleep for maybe 3 hours, and then back to school. Like, it's very physically intense. Um, I have genetic enhancements that help to make that possible. I'm hybridized with various ET races, and I was hopped up on a lot of drugs. So, that kind of made it work physically, but I'm so grateful I'm as healthy as I am, because it really defies logic. And I think my higher dimensional friends have had a lot to do with that,
Yeah.
just helping to sustain this body. Um,
Yeah.
uh, Kind of drifted away from, the initial thing.
No, it's okay. That makes a lot of sense to me too. I don't honestly know how I did it either, but later, once I was out, I had really hard time at night. No surprise there. I couldn't sleep. I was hyper vigilant. I was scared to death. I was having panic attacks. And it's something that I say, well, I got to keep the physical resilience and strength of my body. I don't get sick. I heal immediately from things.
Mm.
There's an endurance, that is not normal. And I think we develop these, I don't know, strengths or abilities because we literally have to. So it's either do it or die, right?
Mm.
So if pushed and if it doesn't kill you, you can really develop what might look like superhuman abilities.
Definitely. I wanted to briefly mention about the underground thing. There are a few
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, there are a few sites that I've identified where some of my siblings and some of my children were taken. And I've been thinking about this lately. I've been really hoping to find some of my children, hoping they can find some of my interviews. I don't know how they would actually realize the connection and be aware that they were my children, but it could happen. But in terms of underground places, there are really, really massive underground facilities where, yes, people spend their whole lives that go thousands of feet, miles down into the earth. Some of the bigger ones that I'm aware of are around Colorado Springs in Colorado. There's a gigantic Air Force base, and there are underground facilities where they keep clones and all sorts of other things extending for hundreds of miles into the next states, like, into Utah and all around that area, the Four Corners area, New Mexico. So I'm aware that a lot of my clones physically were held there underground. A lot of my children were taken to Cheyenne Mountain, another big military facility in the West in Wyoming, I think. Not remembering. But they were taken there, and there's another huge underground facility there. I mean, there are entire cities underground. Like, that's not even an exaggeration. Sometimes you have hundreds of thousands or millions of people down there. So there's an entire functional society underground where a lot of these things are happening. Yeah.
So the point is body swapping hosts.
How does that work?
Yeah. So James Casbolt gave me some information way 20 years ago. Jesus, 20 years ago. 2010. That certain facilities were being used to body swap drug addicts. In other words, you take unwanted, and there's been a lot of this going on. You take members of society who have fallen through whatever it is. Nobody's going to miss them. So if they disappear, nobody's going to be asking awkward questions. So then they have the drug rehabilitation centers. And remember, the whole drug scene is run by the intelligence agencies, and the intelligence agencies are not there for the purposes of the given country that they allegedly work for. They are there for the controlling structures to make sure that the plans of these so-called things
Sure.
can be properly things. So, I mean, if you join an army or whatever it is, you're not fighting for God and country. You're fighting for somebody who gives you orders. And if those orders mean that you go into a certain location so you face certain death, or you're the one killing somebody else, that fits the gameplay of these creatures which are running the show. You join these organizations thinking you're going to fight for your country and your fellow men and women, right? But that isn't what happens, which is why a lot of people are killed, and this is what they want to do, and of course that's a soul harvesting thing, Lucian, all that stuff. So this is why why would anybody go and kill each other all the time? I mean, the millions or thousands, and that's all they want. They want this. A lot of these things are set up to keep a good flow of human energy, Lucian, all that sort of stuff in the system. So essentially, what's happening is that James Casbolt explained that a certain place in Wiltshire were doing soul swapping. Right? Okay? We're in our into
Yes.
So that's the basic principle. So I have a very dear friend down there, beautiful lady, and she's in the thick of it down there. And it's a drug rehabilitation center, and like a lot of these places, they'll use an old mansion or whatever to do that, and they do that, and people go in and they come out and they're all happy afterwards, right? The problem is, and I've done stuff on this, and what I'm not saying is this was happening, but for the purposes of the narrative, I'll say it in that sort of terms. Okay, so you've got this facility, and nearby that facility is a windmill. Now on the map it's called a windmill, and you can go there and it could be a windmill, and it was built quite a long time ago, and it's got certain structures on it, and it's surrounded by trees. And the other point about it is it's not that tall, really. So it's on a hill, and without the trees and stuff there. So you've got a pile of stones which make a tower structure, and we've taken pictures of that. I've talked about it, and it looks very nice. It's called a windmill because isn't that what it does? So other people, a number of people, sensitives who go there, pick up a variety of different things which are very alarming. We're dealing with very negative entities. We're dealing with other types of life forms in the trees, in the area immediately around it, which, depending on your individual sensitivities and observational skills, would come up with a number of extremely paranormal types of things. Okay. There's also not too far away from there is a portal which is guarded by certain beings to protect nasties coming in and out of it, and that's been addressed and people have talked about it. So we went there. The point about this structure is the open side of it, facing south, is able to see directly from this tower a large hill, which looks, from the perspective of where we are from this observation point, like a big silvery hill. It's got a flat top and two equal sides to it. So that's looking or connected with this tower. They're looking at each other. There are 4 portals in the stone structure of this windmill. We'll just call it a windmill. And they are aligned on top of each other. And there's 2 doors in the base of the structure, which are quite large. And opposite those doors are 2 sets of steps. So with the southern steps have got some wear on them. These are at least 200 years old. So they're going to have some wear on them. And then the other set of steps, which are on the north side, again, that faces another hill, which this is very hilly. There's quite a lot of geographical relief in there. So you go down one hill, there's a lot, and then there's another hill. The other hill from that has got a water reservoir in it. Okay? And my dear friend, who I love very much, very wonderful lady, She's in the thick of it down there, and she's in the middle of a set of houses which are in that area. And it's a very picturesque part of Wiltshire. A lot of very, very discontinuities and people picking up different things. Okay, so this is evidence from people's feelings and perceptions. Okay, so the water tank, some people are saying, is being used to store the disincarnate souls of these people, and they're stored in the tank. Right now, I don't know how that works, but this structure, when we went there in just before Christmas, after the Basis 2025 Christmas thing, we went there with a highly perceptive individual called Dr. Amir Jahangiri, who's got a very interesting racial combination. One, he's Iranian. And remember, Iranians are one of the seed original civilizations on this, going back a long time, 3,000 years plus. And he's also Irish. So those are two very juicy racial types to be involved with, bearing in mind the extreme focus on making sure that the Irish never go anywhere and they're being screwed over 1,000 years plus, whatever. Right, and Ireland being land of the Pharaohs, which we talked about last week or the last time, and how Ireland having Irish origins of civilization. So we have a man who's extremely qualified to make these observations. So he made some observations, and he picked up some information where the area is like a massive antenna system, and underneath this structure like a massive dish, and that the relatively small structure of the windmill is effectively the surface extension of that antenna system. Now that's what he is saying, right? Now, the other little problem about the structure is it's been updated with a wooden structure on top with 4 windows, which are all boarded up. And those windows are not aligned in the same way that the other windows of the structure are. So that's been built with design for the purposes of, why have 4 windows up there identical? So it's as if they're linking with 4 other objects or structures with some kind of transmission device of some kind, right? On the south-facing side, where the observation point is on the map, it said there's a little symbol on National Survey symbols of maps for British maps, where you've got a lookout point, and it's got little lines saying you can see this wonderful place, a place to go. You have a great view. That's exactly across the fields and about maybe 3 or 4 miles, where you have this other structure, this other hill, where certain people picked up that there was an alien facility in that mountain, in that hill, where they did physical body swaps, where they had machines. They picked up what the lab was like inside, where just like out of the movies, you've got this tube where you stand in, and then something's taken in or put in, all right. And that structure was only decommissioned in November 2024, according to observations at the time by people who picked up on it, right? Okay. So we have an area where they put the souls into. This is in an area where it's very convenient, where you can bring down and outs into a good supply of down and outs, who you then heal, and they walk out happy and nice members of the society. Or they've been, some people have argued that they've been soul sucked, soul out, ET entity in the human body, or the human wetware, and then they go out into society, thereby placing fifth columnist ETs right into the full fundamental structure of human society, right? That Chris Thomas was talking about this in his work, that they did rituals and procedures to do that. And so you'd get in very special organizations such as the Masons and whatever, and then you'd be feeling very important. I'm getting elevated into this wonderful charitable society, helping society. And then you go into a room and then it's all set up, and then bingo, that's too late for you. Your soul sucked, and there's something put in your body, and then you take control of the reins of power or multinational corporations or whatever. That's how they've been doing it.